No one knew about Emily and Noah. On the surface, they were just coworkers, two faces in a downtown Portland marketing firm that moved too fast for real connection. Emily was the soft-spoken designer who wore cozy sweaters and loved black tea with honey. She lived alone, walked to work, and always had her headphones in. Noah, on the other hand, was confident in a way that didn't try too hard. He had a calm, collected voice that made clients feel heard, and a quiet charm that made people lean in when he spoke. He wore gray suits, drank black coffee, and kept to himself just enough to be intriguing. They didn't make sense on paper. And yet somehow, they really saw each other. When no one else was paying attention, their connection didn't start with fireworks. It began slowly, like a long exhale after holding your breath for too long. A shared late night. At the office, where the only light left was from the computer screens and the glow of the vending machine. A simple joke, followed by a real laugh, the kind that feels like an opening. Then came the inside jokes, the shared glances across the conference table, the text messages about songs that reminded them of each other. It was innocent at first. Just connection. Comfort. Until it wasn't. It happened on a rainy Thursday night, when the power went out in the building just after sunset. Most of the team had already left, but Emily and Noah stayed behind to finish a deadline. The city outside. Their windows was soaked and quiet. With no lights, no distractions, and nothing left to say about the project, they sat across from each other in the dim glow of a laptop screen. The room was silent, except for the hum of the rain and the occasional boom of thunder in the distance. And then, he reached for her hand. She let him. The kiss that followed was slow, unsure at first, but real. It didn't feel rushed or wild, it felt like a sigh of relief. Like they had both been waiting for it longer than they wanted to admit. That night didn't change everything at once. It didn't come with grand declarations or promises. But from that moment on, they were no longer just coworkers. They were something else. Something unspoken, but they kept it hidden. Not because they were ashamed, because they were scared. Emily had been engaged once before. It ended badly, leaving her wary of what happens when other people's opinions get involved in something fragile. Noah had just lost his mother a few months earlier, and the grief still clung to him like fog. They both needed something quiet. Private. Safe. So, they created a secret world in the middle of real life. A world where their fingers brushed when no one was looking, where lunch breaks were spent just a little longer together, where a certain smile meant, "I'm thinking of you," even if no one else noticed. And maybe that's what made it so special, but secrets, even beautiful ones, have a weight. And the longer you carry them, the harder they become to hold. They didn't know it yet, but the love that felt so right in the quiet was slowly becoming harder to protect in the noise of the outside world. What started as something just between them would soon face what they tried so hard to avoid, and when love is invisible to everyone else, it's easier to lose before anyone even knows it existed. In the weeks that followed their first kiss, Emily and Noah slipped into a rhythm that only made sense to them, one that lived in the quiet corners of the world, far from judgment or gossip. They weren't the kind of couple who needed to be seen to feel real. Their love existed between meetings, in long eye contact across the room, in a soft smile passed over the rim of a coffee mug. They never spoke openly about what they were. Not even to each other. But the way Noah tucked her scarf around her neck before she stepped outside, or how Emily saved the last slice of pie for him in the break room fridge, said everything. They were together, even if the world didn't know it. Especially because the world didn't know it, there was something intoxicating about the secrecy. It wasn't about hiding in shame, it was about keeping something delicate safe from being picked apart. Emily had learned the hard way that once people got involved in your love life, things changed. People made comments, took sides, assumed things. She wasn't ready to lose something beautiful to the noise of other people's opinions. And Noah, he was still healing in his own quiet way. Losing his mother had pulled the ground out from beneath him, and Emily had become a kind of steady place to land. Not flashy or dramatic, just warm, patient, and deeply understanding. That kind of closeness doesn't come with labels. It just is. Their time together was filled with soft moments. Sunday morning bagels eaten in his car overlooking the water. Late night calls where neither of them spoke much, but the silence felt comforting. The way he held her hand under the table at a team dinner when everyone else was laughing about something meaningless. These were the moments that made it real, more real than any Instagram photo or dinner party introduction ever could. Still, the longer they kept their world a secret, the harder it became to breathe inside it. There were no anniversaries. No public gestures. No one to vent to when things felt off. When they argued, and they did, softly and rarely, there was nowhere to go with the sadness. Emily couldn't call her sister and say, "We fought." Noah couldn't mention to his friends that he missed her. They were each other's only safe place, but even that had limits. Because love needs room. It needs light. And theirs was. Always in the shadows. One evening, on a company retreat near Lake Tahoe, they woke early and met before sunrise. Everyone else was still asleep, and the air was crisp with mountain cold. Emily wore one of Noah's hoodies, the sleeves too long for her hands. They stood by the edge of the water, watching the light change the sky. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. It was the kind of moment people post about, write poems about, but for them, it was just one more memory they'd carry quietly. He kissed her temple and said softly, "Maybe someday, we won't have to keep this a secret." And she whispered back, "Someday sounds nice. But someday can be dangerous." It gives you hope without direction. And when the days that follow don't bring change, hope can slowly become doubt. Emily started noticing small shifts. Noah's texts weren't as frequent. He didn't linger as long by her desk. He seemed distracted there, but not really with her. She told herself it was work. Stress. Just a phase. But a voice deep inside her had started to whisper something she didn't want to hear. She still smiled when she saw him. Still laughed at his jokes. Still wore his hoodie at home when no one was around. But something was changing, and in a love that no one else knew existed, it's hard to ask for help. When it starts to slip away. Something had changed, and Emily felt it before she could name it. What used to feel warm and easy between her and Noah now felt like walking barefoot over broken glass, slow, careful, and painful in places she couldn't quite touch. His texts had become shorter. His voice, once soft and full of warmth, now sounded distracted, like he was always halfway somewhere else. They still saw each other at work, still shared the occasional glance across a meeting room, but the energy was different. The closeness had turned into polite distance. The long talks became small talk. And the silence? It wasn't the comfortable kind they used to enjoy, it was sharp now. Cold. Heavy. Emily kept telling herself it was just stress, that Noah was going through something he wasn't ready to talk about. But deep down, she knew. She could feel it in the way he stopped looking at her like she was his favorite secret. She tried to hold on. She brought his favorite sandwich to work one afternoon, just like she used to. He smiled, said thank you, but didn't touch it. That same week, he missed her birthday. No message. No call. Not even a late-night apology. She waited all day, her phone silent, her heart aching quietly. And yet, she didn't tell anyone. Because how do you explain the pain of a relationship no one knows you're in? How do you say, "He forgot my birthday," when no one even knows he matters that much to you? It got harder to pretend everything was fine. Especially when she saw him laughing too easily with a new girl in the office. Emily watched from a distance as Noah leaned on the counter, smiling in a way she hadn't seen in weeks. The kind of smile that once belonged to her. Something inside her clenched, not in jealousy, but in grief. Grief for the version of them that used to exist. That night, she didn't cry. She just went home, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at her reflection for a long time. She looked the same. But something inside her had cracked. When he finally reached out, it wasn't what she needed. It was a call, short, hesitant, almost apologetic. "I think we should take some space," he said. His voice sounded unsure, like even he didn't believe his own words. Space? From what? From a relationship that lived in stolen moments and unspoken promises? From something so carefully hidden it barely had a name? Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. "Okay," she whispered, and hung up before her voice could break the ice. In the days that followed, she stopped waiting. She deleted the playlists they used to share. She stopped rereading old texts. She wore red lipstick to work, a bold color she hadn't dared to try when she was with him. People noticed. "You look different," they said. "Stronger." No one asked why. No one knew she was quietly grieving the loss of a love that never had the chance to live out loud, but even in heartbreak, she held on to grace. She didn't talk badly about him. Didn't try to win him back. She simply let the silence speak. It wasn't anger that filled the space he left behind, it was quiet acceptance. A kind of heartbreak that doesn't scream, but hums softly through your bones, because when no one knows your love existed, no one sees the pieces fall. And that kind of heartbreak is the loneliest of all. Months passed, and the silence between. Emily and Noah settled like dust, soft but everywhere. Life moved on, at least on the surface. Emily threw herself into work, took up morning runs, and even said yes to a few dates, though her heart wasn't in them. She laughed when she was supposed to, smiled when people asked how she was doing, but inside, there was an ache that never really left. It wasn't the kind of pain that demanded attention. It was quieter than that, like a missing piece you forget about until something reminds you it was ever there. And for Emily, that reminder came out of nowhere, at a friend's wedding in Seattle. She hadn't expected to see him. Not there. Not like that. But when she looked up during the reception and saw Noah standing near the bar, dressed in a navy suit, his eyes scanning the room, her heart stopped for just a second too long. Not he looked almost the same, except quieter around the edges, like life had humbled him in small, quiet ways. Their eyes met. And in that moment, time folded in on itself. Everything they hadn't said, everything that had been left behind, came rushing back in the space of a single glance. They didn't talk right away. Emily danced with someone else that night, smiled for photos, made small talk at her table, but she could feel his eyes on her, like they still knew how to find her in a crowd. Later, when the night had thinned out and the music had softened, she found herself standing alone outside under the string lights, wrapped in her shawl, the air cool against her skin. And then, there he was. He didn't say her name like a question. He said it like he'd been carrying it. "Emily." She turned, and for a long moment, they just stood there in the silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, steadier than she remembered. I was scared, he said, not looking away. Scared of messing it up. Scared of being seen. Scared of losing something I wasn't sure how to hold. Her heart tightened at his words. Part of her had wanted this moment, an apology, an explanation. A sign that she hadn't imagined it all. But another part of her, the part that had grown stronger in his absence, didn't need to be saved. She didn't answer right away. Just looked at him, this man who had once been her quiet place, and now stood like a ghost from a life she almost had. You did mess it up, she said gently. No blame, just truth. But so did I. I let it stay small because I was afraid of what would happen if we gave it air. He nodded, the hurt in his eyes soft but real. I still think about you. I know, she said. Me too. They didn't fall into each other's arms. There was no dramatic kiss, no promises of forever. Just a moment. Honest. Raw. Human. He walked her to her car, and they talked, not as lovers trying to fix something broken, but as two people who had once loved each other deeply, and maybe still did in some quiet way. They didn't make plans. They didn't ask what came next, but when she drove away that night, Emily didn't feel broken. She felt free. Because love, even when it ends, doesn't have to be ugly. Sometimes it just changes shape. Sometimes it lets go, and in the end, even after everything fell apart, the love they shared, secret, soft, and flawed, had still been real. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who's loved and lost in silence. Follow Echo Tales for more mature, romantic stories that echo through your soul.